First place Arsenal host fifth place Chelsea on Sunday in the Gunners' last major home test of the season. And in this episode of Tactics Exposed Team Talk, Dino will be answering 3 tactical questions from you guys as usual. But before we get to that, I had a couple of weeks off recently, and in my absence, Dino headed down to the Arsenal training ground to have a chat about tactics with someone far more interesting than me.
Viewers of Tactics Exposed know that I'm a tactics nerd, and a lot of you come back to me and say that tactics aren't important in the modern game. So I'm going to ask the man here, Declan Rice, tell me how much you enjoy tactics in the modern game and how important it is in the Premier League now.
I think it's physically impossible to play a game in the Premier League without tactics, without going into the game, knowing what to do, not knowing what you have to do is so important. I think if I could invite 100 fans in to come and watch our manager and how he delivers a meeting and shows what the opposition are going to do, I think you'd be taken back, because it took me a while to grasp it. But tactically, he's incredible. And for me, going into a game, knowing what the opposition are going to do, it makes it easier for me.
Amazing stuff, Dino. So tactics do matter after all.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone can stay out of the comments when they say to me it's not about tactics and all that. Of course it is. You know?
Really interesting though, wasn't it? That Declan Rice was talking about if he could bring 100 fans into one of those meetings with Mikel Arteta, it would blow their mind, and that's spot on, isn't it?
Yeah. And I tried to break in, but they wouldn't let me. Rice was very much. He was a great guy as well, by the way. Annoyingly, as a Tottenham fan, but he knew I was a Tottenham fan, so he talked about all those things about how Arteta goes about it. And even in the room I was in, there was an analyst with his laptop out looking at one of the next games, and they were very conscious of me looking over their shoulder and stuff. But it was a privilege, and it was a privilege to talk football with a current, top-class footballer.
Yeah, he's probably a bit worried about you nicking his job, that analyst, to be honest, Dino. Well, look, that's what we try and do, of course, on Tactics Exposed Team Talk, is bring people basically into the analytics room. I'm still a bit miffed you didn't ask Declan Rice about Leon away for West Ham. But let's talk about the Arsenal-Chelsea game, Dino. As always, question number 1 from the viewers: how do Arsenal break Chelsea's low blocks? A decent question. Obviously, Chelsea got a few selection headaches, particularly in defence at the moment, but they have defended well against Arsenal in the past. I know the key battle you're going to talk about, but what's the answer?
Yeah, it is a good question, and I would be very shocked if this isn't part of one of the analysts' thing that they look at. The League Cup semi-final, second leg, on Liam Rosenior when he went to the Emirates and effectively played for the last 20 minutes. That was the idea, stay in the game that long. And in that, while this obviously talks about the low block, we have to be aware that Cucurella is likely not to play, the hamstring injury, barring a shock and him coming back. So let's just show what Rosenior did in that game. Effectively, he went to a back 5, and it was almost like wing back. So now if he's got this decision to make around whether he's going to play Joel Hatto or if he's going to play Malo Gusto as the left back, you would assume Reece James stays over here. But if he's got to make that decision, then maybe going to a back 5 suits them, because you could play Hatto as the left centre-back, and then whatever decision he makes as the other centre-back, be that Sarr or Badiashile, it takes a little bit of pressure off them, and that then creates, obviously, that low block shape that they played in that game.
Just worth noting, you started on the defence there. Fofana obviously out after his suspension for the red card he picked up at Burnley, and Cucurella, he's so much more important in this game, given that he's largely had the better of Bukayo Saka in recent battles between the two.
Yeah, absolutely right. I've done whole episodes. Go back and watch them after this on the Saka and Cucurella battle. And I know Arsenal fans get very, shaky about the number of times that Cucurella fouls him. But that is, he does. They're right. But that is part of defending against Bukayo Saka. So how do they break that low block? Now, I'm going to assume for a second that Chelsea don't go 5 at the back and they start with a 4, okay? And then into that shape, where what's been happening is they've had Caicedo and Andre Santos, and then they've had Palmer in behind, but Enzo Fernandez has been starting out one side, and then you've got Neto or one of the wingers and Palmer, Fernandez, and obviously João Pedro, as I said.
Yep.
And so if you're in that shape, they're going to
probably, if they don't go 5 at the back, probably copy the kind of Arsenal 4-4-2 low block out of possession, where Palmer and Pedro don't necessarily have the job to come back into a midfield shape, but to be the ones to lead the press. And then Neto, who's a very hard-working wide player, will come in, and obviously Enzo Fernandez, a tactical master, the Bernardo Silva, the Martin Odegaard of Chelsea, who I've talked about a lot before. So I think they'll do that. And that means that, again, I talk about this a lot, it's actually not this part of the field that Arsenal need to be concerned about. It's this part of the field here, in this shape here, where if they go and load that position, it becomes overcrowded again. Yep. As I've talked about before, it becomes overcrowded, too many players. So I think the key here is what they do in this middle area, in getting this player and this player, the fullbacks, or if they play 5, the wide centre-backs, out here into this position. And what they did against Tottenham was not push the fullbacks in, all the way in here, all the way in here. They held them back there so that these players get drawn out here, and that space is created in those 2 areas.
And worth just noting again, that was an opportunity. We got to be told you so exposed, didn't we? Because that's exactly what you said, how Arsenal could actually sort of approach a low block that you expected Tottenham to have. That is what happened. And it seems counterintuitive, doesn't it, to say, well, actually, to attack better against deep defences, throw less players forward?
Yeah, and it is a strange one. And it also, in this game, particularly, more so than Tottenham, because Chelsea are a better team than Tottenham, right. It's how are you going to use Chelsea's moves and Chelsea's shape against them in this period. And what they did under Maresca and what they've continued to do under Rosenior at times is invert a fullback. So let's just say this is Hato or Gusto. Saka in this position here will spend, I think, a lot more time here again instead of here. And that means that naturally the fullback's going to go in. And if you add that to the fact that this player here has been Enzo Fernandez, who in recent weeks, who is naturally a central player as well, if they can get Zubimendi or Saliba, but Zubimendi into a position like that, naturally what Enzo Fernandez is will go into there. So if then they can get Saka dragging the fullback in, this is where they're going to get the joy. And I think there's an argument in this game for Ben White starting ahead of Jurriën Timber, because as brilliant as Timber has been, I think he needs a rest. They've had a week off this week, Arsenal, but Ben White's overlapping and attacking is better than Timber's.
You called Timber the best fullback in Europe earlier this season.
That was before Christmas. And I actually, I stand by that. I think up till Christmas, he was the best fullback in Europe. I think he's fallen off. But again, a lot of that is games. It's cut him some slack. He's played an extraordinary amount of football in that time. And still in a defensive position, 1v1 against the winger, I'd have Timber over White. But in this game, at home, I genuinely think in that Arsenal analyst room and team room, they will be discussing, is White a better option to help Saka and Gyökeres and Eze or Odegaard in that position to attack the Chelsea left back?
Just very briefly then, why?
Well, just think
what does he bring?
He's better going forwards. Him and Saka have spent a lot of time together as well, more so than him and Timber. And, you know, I just think he feels more natural in this space. His arrival time of his overlap run is better than Timber's. And that might be one of the reasons Timber's a better defender, because Timber's just slightly more conservative in that position. But I think White's better at crossing it. He scored a goal against Chelsea as well. He gives that height in the penalty area on set pieces, which is bound to come into things in this game as well. And it will be a selection dilemma of White or Timber in this game, definitely.
Yeah, nice one, Dino. Let's have a look at question number 2 then. Is Arteta going to recall Odegaard? Good question. Eze played out of his skin, got all the headlines, behind man of the match Gyökeres in that 4-1 win at Tottenham. Odegaard did come off the bench. Does he start for this one?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? And there's a real split in the Arsenal fan camp about this. Odegaard's the captain. You know, he brings a lot of things that Eze doesn't, but obviously Eze brings a lot of things that Odegaard doesn't, which he showed in the North London derby. And that little partnership that was there with Gyökeres and Eze in that game was massive. But you've got to remember horses for courses, right? It has to be, they've got an amazing squad, Arsenal. And much like I was talking about Timber and White, they've got the option to go both ways. And that indecision will be playing on Chelsea's mind. Are they preparing for Eze and Gyökeres, or are they preparing for Odegaard to come back in? There's even a scenario where you could play both of them, right? But
really?
That means dropping Zubimendi, playing Rice as the deep one, and then playing the sort of twin attacking eights. But
you would argue Odegaard has delivered on a far more consistent basis than Eze. Eze's coming off the back of one amazing performance and quite a few.
You could say that, but there will be Arsenal fans jumping in there straight away saying that Odegaard's had more chance to do it than Eze, and Eze's not been given the minutes. So, look, maybe.
What do you think then?
Well, I think maybe that Eze is the one who is going to become like the special teams. He's going to be the guy who they go to when they're going to do something different. And I actually don't think they need to do very much different against Chelsea. I think they'll overpower them. And so, it might not be the greatest spectacle again, but they will overpower them. So let's just go through that part of it, because the key thing for me is one of them is how Chelsea play out from the back, and then I'll move on to how Arsenal play out from the back. But Chelsea have often been pushing one of the fullbacks right on, which means then, and Esteval's injured, so unlikely to play, but he's been going into there so that they've got these receivers in that big space in there. And the idea, even when they push a goalkeeper into almost the back four, the idea is obviously to get him on, and then open that area up. That's the Liam Rosenior tactic. That's how he wants to get them to play out, so that then you've got the type of players, Palmer, Esteval, João Pedro, he might drop in and switch over with Palmer, and the same thing, or Enzo Fernandez might go in there and Palmer will switch out there. But all of these players are press resistant, and they're good on the turn, and then they're springing the attack. So that's the plan, okay? So then, if you think about that from an Odegaard-Eze perspective, then who's the leader of the press? Odegaard is. Odegaard's the one who is better than all of those Arsenal players at knowing when to go and when to stay. And if they've got Odegaard instead of Eze, who is the let's go, then they can do that against Chelsea. And Chelsea intentionally are trying to play the ball in this area here in little risky passes. They're not playing the one out there because they feel like that just leaves somebody 1v1 and he can get crowded out. They're playing risky little balls in that little box shape that they always had from Enzo Maresca before. They're trying to attract players around the ball like that to make it really tight so that they open that space there for those guys to go. And I think that Arsenal, if they get their press right, that's how they can use that against Chelsea to then be flying back the other way. And that's where, if they do that, win the ball back there, and then you've got Martinelli or Trossard, Gyökeres and Saka running at that back four, that's going to cause Chelsea loads of problems. So, look, it's a real big dilemma again. If I was Mikel Arteta, I think I'd be going back to Odegaard, if I'm being honest. But the pressure after a performance like that from Eze and the big decision to make to drop him, that's why you're in the title race, right? To make those big decisions.
Well, this is where Mikel Arteta earns his money. This could be the difference this game, and obviously all the games for the rest of the season, as some people will say, between keeping his job or not. Let's move on, Dino, to question number 3. Will Liam Rosenior continue the cat and mouse games at corners? Now, I feel like you should probably explain what the question means and then answer it.
Yeah, I will explain that, because it's another one where, I told you so exposed. If you go back to when they played Tottenham, Chelsea, and it was the long throws in the corners that Thomas Frank, remember him, was having some joy about. And I suggested in that show that Chelsea should leave players up the field. And that was the first time it was done.
At corners.
Yeah. And Maresca did it against Tottenham. Arteta has done it in a couple of games as well, in defending corners. And Liverpool have done it as well. So it's starting to come in, and it's a tactic to use. So let's just set it up, okay? So Chelsea are defending a corner, right? So you're going to go in, and there's going to be,
it's probably Arsenal taking it, isn't it?
Arsenal taking it, you're correct. Yeah, very, very good. There's going to be that many defenders normally in the box.
Yep.
Arsenal will load at the back post, as they do. They'll have one going in there who's going to be, there's one to disrupt the goalkeeper, and there's one in there. So the reason I've left those there is because you can see straight away that's what Rosenior did in that game. In the League Cup game. And what then happened was they went like that, Arsenal, as they should. and this player here went, well, I've got to go and get him. I think it was Timber. And he ended up actually not going all the way. He ended up not going goal side. It was almost a bit like, well, if the goalkeeper does well enough to catch it, I've got enough time to go back there. So that's what happened. And actually what it means is two things. One, the goalkeeper's got more room because there's less players in the box. Secondly, it gives defenders more of a chance to get a run at the header. But, and a big but, it's against Arsenal. It's against the best attacking team at corners and set pieces in the league, if not in the world. And then that gives Gabriel, Saliba, maybe Ben White and Gyökeres more of a run at the ball themselves as well. So it is a cat and mouse game. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see them do it at some corners and then not at others. And who makes that decision on the field? Maybe Reece James, maybe João Pedro. It's one where he says, oh, let's go up for this one, as long as they're all on the same page. So I'd like to see Arsenal do something slightly different, because this player here is the key to it, okay? So if they go like that, naturally, what's going to happen is they all push to the back post because they're looking for an overload there. What if he comes here and comes for a little short one? You know, that might mean you get someone pull it across for a shot. We've seen Zubimendi score from there for Arsenal this season. Okay, that is a risk, and that is a game of cat and mouse again. So will that player then, if he goes in there, will that player go, actually, I can't leave him there. But surely, they're all marking, I'm going to have to go back in there. And then you've counteracted what Rosenior's trying to do.
Chelsea have still got more players in the box at the moment.
Yes.
So someone from the box surely comes out and covers that
yes,
run,
but
they
always have a blocker on the goalkeeper. So that's where it levels out. So and that's why Arsenal know that, because remember, you've got a corner taker. So yes, you're a man down. Goalkeeper, you're a man down. Course, okay. Yeah. But because they have a blocker on the goalkeeper, they've got two players there instead of one. So it evens up. They have still got one extra on the attack. So but again, that's a big risk. Are you then bringing one out there and then you level it up
1v1,
and then you're going 1v1 against Arsenal in a position you don't want to have? Because as a defensive set-piece coach, they'll want the spare man to be the ball attacker, who is not the one that is marking somebody. He wants to be the ball attacker. So I'm really intrigued to see this one. It's one for us to look at on Monday in Exposed and see what they do. And I would be very surprised if Nicolas Hover and Arteta haven't come up with a new plan, a new way of playing cat and mouse against Rosenior in that mode. And it will be, I think it'll be pretty fascinating of how they do that.